Let's expand on that headline story of the country being plunged into darkness this weekend, as we are currently on stage 6 load shedding. This, the power utility says, is due to the failure of 8 generating units overnight. We're now joined by Kanakana Mudzanani, SA Youth Economic Council President, especially in light of the resignation of Andre de Ruyter, the CEO of Eskom. Good afternoon to you, and thank you very much for coming into studio.
Well, good afternoon to you, Dudu, and good afternoon to your viewers as well. And thank you so much for inviting the South African Youth Economic Council to come and share its perspective on the much and long-awaited resignation of the Chief Executive Officer of Eskom.
And that's just it. You are anxious, well, maybe anxious is the wrong word, but you actually want the resignation not to happen, or the last day not to happen in March 2023. You believe he should immediately vacate the post. Why?
Whilst we acknowledge the fact that Andre de Ruyter has to leave, and we are happy with the fact that he has resigned, we must state it on record that the board must not grant him the privilege of serving as CEO until the end of March. We believe that South Africans have endured a catastrophic tenure of Eskom's incompetence, and we fully believe that we need to turn the situation around. It's about time that the board takes action and says, you know, South Africans, just by virtue of being in seasons of festivities, and we are already in stage 6, deserve better, and therefore a much more capable and capacitated group of executives must be appointed to take over with a turnaround strategy attached with time frames, which is something that South Africans would dearly appreciate.
So are you of the belief that it's not just Andre de Ruyter who needs to take responsibility or maybe resign? There's many other executives that should follow suit?
Definitely. In our statement, we acknowledged the fact that Andre de Ruyter's resignation on its own is not sufficient. We fully believe that the appointment of the new board was a step towards the right direction. However, many more executives must do South Africans justice and step aside and allow a team of skilled and competent executives to be rewarded with the opportunity of steering the ship towards the right direction. And you know, Dudu, many have raised views such as no executive wants to take over Eskom, but we can see clearly by the caliber of people who are in the board that competent executives and of professionals with a good track record are more than capable and are more than willing to take over Eskom, with the likes of Mteto Nyati now agreeing to serve in the board of Eskom, with the likes of the chairperson of the board who also sits as the chair of Nedbank. So it is a fallacy, and it is a view that must be rejected, that no executive would want to serve as the chief executive officer of Eskom. As a council, we've had deliberations and discussions with many professionals, and many of them are looking forward to take over the job, not because of the incentives, but because they understand that the issue of energy security is imperative to South Africans and business as a whole, to assure that we grow our economy, we create more jobs, and we address various socio-economic issues that we are faced with as a country.
President Cyril Ramaphosa, leading the Lechima campaign this weekend, stressed that Eskom is not being sabotaged. No one is sabotaging Eskom, not from Eskom or from government. And so if we take a look at the direct impact to everyday people on the ground, I mean, what are you hearing? Because we're also hearing of this just energy transition plan, right? There are people who will be buffered because they can have the solar panels, etc., and install the solar systems. But then there's also another argument that this will be too costly for the everyday South African.
So, number one, right, what we expect is that the board is going to put an interim structure at least in the next 2 weeks, but also they must present a turnaround strategy that Eskom would be willing to undertake in order to ensure that we have energy security in this country. And as a council, we have consistently reaffirmed the fact that as much as there are discussions about the just energy transition and we have climate commitments that we've made at a global scale, we must take into account the fact that our economy will be unable to function without energy. So as a council, we continue to reaffirm that multiple or various sources of energy must all be used in quest to generate electricity. We must make use of coal, we must explore oil and gas, we must integrate renewable energy into the system. We have further stated on public that we fully believe that Eskom must be placed within the jurisdiction of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, because it cannot be that a department which is tasked with defining the energy direction of the country is not tasked with the responsibility to look after the power utility. For instance, the DMRE has a policy called the Integrated Resource Plan. It's a government document that stipulates how do we acquire energy security and ensure that we produce energy at a competitive rate for South Africans. Then you've got an Eskom on the other end, at least under Andre's tenure, had adopted an anti-fossil fuel approach, and it was a direction that was seemingly not in touch with the Integrated Resource Plan. So we firmly believe that a board on its own must present a turnaround strategy that acknowledges the fact that we have coal, oil and gas, we've got nuclear as well, and we also have renewable energy. Further than that, we appeal to the President and his cabinet to say we need you to do away with separating energy. Place energy under the jurisdiction of the Department of Mineral Resources, because clearly putting it under the Department of Public Enterprises has caused harm for South Africans. Even further than that, there is no stability or direction on what is our energy stance as a country.
And your position on independent power producers?
Well, we fully believe that we cannot afford to outsource the state's responsibility to produce energy on the basis that we've seen on multiple occasions. You can now look at the airlines, that the private sector is much more concerned about generating profit, or rather maximizing profit. So the state cannot commit a blunder of surrendering the responsibility to produce electricity to private players. We firmly believe that the state must just appoint competent people. We must do away with acts of corruption and political interference at Eskom, and the power utility on its own, if it's under the right guidance, is going to make sure that it produces electricity in a reliable manner for South Africans, but even over and above that, at rates which are cheaper and affordable for our people.
Kanakana Mudzanani, SA Youth Economic Council President.
Nah.